here. And what is this slope analysis and how is the lab investigation is going to help in this slope stability analysis? That is what we are trying to find out. So in this case, if you can observe, there are two kinds of slopes, and one is with respect to natural slopes, the other one is with respect to man-made slopes. Initially, if I want to understand what is this natural slope, this slope is consisting mainly of soil particles, or it is mainly made up of soil aggregates. So I need to understand what is the type of soil particles that is present there. Why does landslides occur? What may be the reason that there is a landslide? All these parameters should be analyzed with respect to slope stability analysis. And therefore, in this regard, I have to find out the properties of the soil masses. I have to determine the properties of the soil mass. Why is it failing? What is the condition there? What is the water content there? Or what is the soil properties there? All these things I should be knowing. And this is a photo. These three photos are probably taken from Dandeli in Karnataka, in near Belgaum district. And this I have taken from a Google photo. Similarly, there is other type of photos with respect to slope failures in terms of Kodagu district in Karnataka, and this is actual photos. If you can observe here, now the soil mass which was there, it has been landslided here. The slope has been failure here. The failure has been taking place. Why is it taking place? Is it only because there is a deforestation, because we have removed some amount of forest area? Not only that is the case. There are many other factors. The main factor is with respect to soil properties. Not on every type of soil property there is going to be a failure. Only with respect to some soil properties or some types of soils, there will be a slope failures. Generally, if I can observe in terms of Madikeri and other districts, why it was happened in the region of Coorg region in Karnataka, why did it happen, the slope failures? Mainly one of the primary reasons is with respect to water pressure. So in this case, every year there was a rainfall, every year there used to happen, but not every year there used to be landslides. We have to understand why there was a landslide, because when we try to analyze, when we try to dig deep into it, we find out that the slope failure happened because with respect to it was a continuous 4 to 5 days of maximum rainfall there. The rainfall which was to take place for between 2 weeks had taken directly with respect to between 4 to 5 days. And because of such main reason, now there was a slope failure. It is not only because we have removed the forest area or because we are constructing something else there. That is not the primary reason. The primary reason with respect to is water. So in this regard, on water and the soil. So here we are speaking in terms of soil. And these are with respect to shallow failures, shallow landslides, and this is with respect to deep failures. If you can observe here, this is the large area here. It's almost about 200 meters from the top to bottom. So that is a region in this that is going to happen here. Again, this is also a photo taken from Kodagu. Again, if you can look here, the entire area of this mountain region has been slided off. The soil has been slided off. So in this regard, as a geotechnical consultant, what is that I need to require? I need to find out why is it failing now. So that is one thing with respect to why we are doing this test or why we are doing this session. The other thing is with respect to man-made slopes. So how is this relevant? Man-made slopes in the sense, suppose I want to build a highway embankment or a railway embankment. Again, it is made up of soil particles, soil aggregates. So I have to get some soil from somewhere else. Then I have to put it up that soil, then compact it, then make it into layers, and then make it an embankment. Then suppose, what will happen if it is a highway or railway embankment? Suppose, again, this is a photo which I have taken from with respect to Bangalore-Mysore highway. There is an extension of 6-lane road now. So this is an embankment, earthen embankment. Now what is that I'm doing? I'm putting some amount of soil mass, then I'm increasing the height of this embankment. Now, if I want to have stability of this soil mass, what will happen? If I have a flatter slope, the slope should be flatter. What will happen? Now it is consuming more amount of area. The areas that is going to consume this more. So in this region, I need to take care of this land area. I need to purchase this land area from the private partners. So in this regard, if I don't want to do that thing, what else I can do? I can reduce the slope angle here, or I can make the slope angle to be steepwards. I can do that thing. So in this regard, what will happen? Now only this area amount of land area is required. So again, the cost wise is less. So all these things, how do I determine this thing? What is the soil properties? Again, or how much should be the land that should be acquired? Everything depends on the soil parameters here only. So what is the type of soil that has been taken, and what is the load that is going to come on the soil mass? So again, this is with respect to a filling here. If I want to do with respect to cutting here, now again we want to do a highway road here. Now we are doing in terms of cutting here. Again, it is cut section. What should be slope angle here? If I start digging out in terms of soil mass, not only probably around up to 3 meters or 5 meters, it can retain on its own. If I go beyond this length, what will happen? Beyond this depth, what will happen? My soil is going to fail. It is going to collapse. So in this regard, what is that I need to find out? Why should I do this thing? So what should be slope angle I can provide here? Or can it be a steep angle, or it can be a flatter angle? All these regions I need to be understanding here. Similarly, again, with respect to a railway embankment, this is the slope that is going to be provided. What is the amount of area that is going to be given for this embankment? All these reasons I need to find out with respect to soil parameters. Again, with respect to an earthen dam, again, with respect to earthen dam also, you need some slope angle. Again, this is your slope angle. So how much should be the slope angle should be provided? Whether this slope angle for this water pressure or this water layer is sufficient. All these things I should be knowing. Similarly, if I have a canal section, how much should be the slope of this canal lining here? What should be the slope that should be given with respect to only soil mass? Again, I know I'm going to pour up some concrete and then I'm going to this concrete lining. But if it is only a soil liner, what's the type of soil that should be used and what should the slope angle that should be provided? Whether it is 1:1 in this case, whether it should be 1:1 or it can be 1.5:1. All these things should be looked into it. So this is the main reason that we have taken up this topic. So first, what we're trying to do, we are trying to find out what is the problem there. Now for this problem, what is the solution? So in this regard, the solution will be starting with respect to laboratory experiments. So in this case, we are starting with respect to laboratory experiments. So then if I have, this is the case, the basic test that is going to be provided in terms of a soil report. Because I'm a geotechnical consultant, somebody expects me to give a soil report on the stability of the slopes. So the basic test that is required, the minimum test that is going to be required with respect to this kind of problems is one is with respect to density, the other one is with respect to particle size distribution. In the sense, what's the type of soil there, whether it is a sandy type of soil, whether it is a clay type of soil, I need to understand. Then what's the shear parameters? So what are the shear parameters? If I know all these parameters, then I can directly find out something called as factor of safety. With respect to stability of slopes, we are always going to go with respect to factor of safety, whether this slope will be safe or whether this slope will be unsafe. So in this regard, I am trying to find out what is this factor of safety. So to finally conclude with respect to this factor of safety, I need to be knowing these tests. I need to perform these tests in the laboratory. These are the basic tests. And I'm also going to discuss about some other tests also, but those tests will not be a basic test, but it will be a supplementary test, which I can have a more confident in terms of my analysis. So in that regard, I'm trying to find out here. So if I try to start here, the first thing that is going to require with respect to geotechnical laboratory or geotechnical field investigation with respect to the code book is which is relevant is SP36. The SP36 is with respect to only geotechnical testing. If it is part 1, it is with respect to laboratory testing. If it is part 2, it is with respect to field testing. You need to remember this code book actually. It's a compendium of the codes and all the codes. Generally, the code book, the code number for soil will be 2720. Yes, 2720, part 1, part 2, part 3. It will be various number of parts for different laboratory tests. So the basic thing that you need to remember is compendium as a compendium. I need to know with respect to SP36 and the SP36, part 1 and part 2. All the tests will be with respect to 2720. Again, because I'm taking with respect to part 2 also because with respect to density is a field density or a field testing. So that is why I have taken up this part 2 also. It is also relevant for you. So once I know this thing, then if I start with respect to a testing, the basic test that, as I told, is that I need to find out the density. I need to, if I go to a site, if I go to a slope angle, this is the slope angle there, I need to find out the soil parameter, whether this slope will be intact or not. In this regard, I need to find out what are the soil properties here in the slope. So the basic properties with respect to is density. So in this regard, what is the density? How do I find out? In density, there are two methods. One is with respect to core cutter method. The other one is with respect to sand replacement method. So first we'll be discussing only with respect to core cutter method here. I'll be discussing with respect to core cutter method. Okay, as the name itself indicates, core cutter is nothing but you have a core. This thing is called as a core. This steel one is called as a core. This is having a cutter edge at the bottom. You will have a cutter edge at the bottom. In the sense, the diameter of this thickness will be shortened here. It will be a cutter edge. It can drive through. So again, what is the height of this core now? Generally, the height will be about 13 centimeter in height. That will be inner height always. And also the inner diameter. The inner diameter of this core, it will be a cylindrical core. So the inner diameter of this core will be 10 centimeter. 10 centimeter by 13 centimeter. In the sense, this core can contain a volume of 1000 centimeter cube, can contain a soil of 1000 centimeter or 1 liter of my water. If I put it in terms of water, it will be 1 liters. So once I know this thing, the basic thing that I need to do in the laboratory, what do? First, I measure the height of the core. The height of the core is 10 centimeter. The second thing is, what is the diameter of the core? The diameter of the core is 12.7 or 12.8. It depends. Always while taking the height of the core, try to take in 3 different places. One, put up a scale, measure here, take the value. To put up a scale, measure here, take the value, and put up a scale here, measure the value. Then take the average of this value, because while driving, what will happen? Sometimes there will be a cutter edge here. The height will not be constant here. So that is why always take at 3 random places the height. So once, I have interchanged here. It should have been this one. The height should be 12.8, diameter should be 10. Then I can know the volume of this mold, volume of this core here. Volume is nothing but pi d square by 4. I know the value into H. I know I'm going to get it in terms of 998 or 997. I'm going to get that value. It is around 1000 centimeter cube. Then take only this core here. Then take only this core and take the weight of this core. So the weight of this core probably it will be around 980 grams or something. It depends. Probably in your laboratory, you might get it in terms of 700 or 900. It depends. Generally, I'm giving a value. Then what is that you need to do? Now, once these are the things that you need to be done at the laboratory, then you go to the site. What is that to do? There are 3 things here. There are 3 equipments that is required here. One is, this is my core. This is my core. This thing is called as dolly. This thing is called as dolly. This thing is called as rammer. It is called as a rammer. Just like a hammer, it is nothing but rammer, R, with respect to R. So I go to the site. Then I level the surface where I want to find out the density. First thing, the main important thing is I level the surface, ground surface. If there is any plants there, if there is any rocks there, or if there is any grass there that has been grown, you cut off all these things, make a level ground surface, then place this core entirely on the soil mass, directly keep it as it is, such that the cutting edge should be at the bottom. Once you have done this thing, then above this thing, you place the dolly. Above this, place the dolly. Then using the rammer, you start hitting the core here. You start hitting the core. Then what's the number of blows that you have to hit? There is no number of blows. You can directly hit 5 blows or you can hit 10 blows. It doesn't matter at all. And what's the height that should be taken up? There is no height that need to be taken up. You need not lift 1 meter or you need not lift only 30 centimeter. It depends on you. If you are capable enough, do it directly. And ensure that this core is driven into the soil mass such that only the dolly is visible to you. If I drive this thing, only the dolly should be visible to me. The entire core should be in the ground surface. Once I do this thing, then using a pickaxe, remove this extra soil. Remove this outward soil. Then take out this core intact. Take out this core intact such that keeping your hand at the bottom. Remove this core with the dolly. Then keep it outside. Then level of the surface here. Level the surface of the core. That is, remove the dolly now. Now level the surface with respect to top. Level the surface with respect to bottom. Then you take the weight. Then you need to take the weight. That is with respect to core plus soil. That is with respect to core plus soil. You took the weight. Probably now you are going to get something with respect to 2500. Earlier you got a value of probably 980. Now you got this much. Now take the difference. If I take the difference, what is that I get? I get the density, or I get the mass of my soil mass. Density is nothing but mass by volume, whereas density is nothing but mass by volume. So if I do 2500 minus 980, probably 1550, 520 something I'm going to get. Then divided by volume. Volume is again 9000, approximately 1000. So if I get this thing, I'm going to get my values in terms of here gram per centimeter cube. Always ensure that whatever you are going to take, keep it in terms of centimeter, keep it in terms of centimeter, keep this weight in terms of gram. Because density will always be represented in terms of gram per centimeter cube. Generally, it will be in terms of kg per meter cube, or kilonewton per meter cube. These are the 3 standard units with respect to density of any material. So therefore, I get this value. You get this value on gram per centimeter cube. Once you got the density in terms of gram per centimeter cube, if I want to convert this value, then in terms of, if I want to convert, multiply by this value, whatever you get in terms of this value, into 9.81. So directly you are going to get the bulk unit weight. You are going to get the unit weight, that is in terms of kilonewton per meter cube. Don't do any other connection here or conversion here. It is going to be prolonging here. So ensure that you take the values in terms of centimeters and grams. So this is with respect to core cutter test. Now, in all the cases, I cannot drive this core. Suppose what will happen if I have a rocky strata here, if I have a rock strata here, gravelly soil, if I try to put this core here, if I try to hit it here also, it is going to rebound. In the sense, it is not going to proceed inside. It is not going to diverge inside. So in that case, what's the method that I need to use? So in that case, I'm going to use something called as sand replacement method. In that case, I need to something, the other method is with respect to sand replacement method. So in this sand replacement method, what is that I need to find out? In the sand replacement method, there are three things. One is this method sample is this apparatus is nothing but sand pouring cylinder. It is nothing but sand pouring cylinder. This apparatus with respect to calibrating container or calibrating can. Calibrating container or calibrating can. This is a tray with a hole. This is a normal tray with a hole. So these are three minimum equipments that is required here. Then what's that I need to find out? First thing, I'm going to take up this sand pouring cylinder and I'm going to fill this sand pouring cylinder. It will be empty. I'm going to fill up with sand such that the sand should be passing through 1 mm and retained on 600 micron. In the sense, I have a sieve here. I have a sieve here. This sieve is 1 mm. This sieve is 1 mm. This sieve is 0.6 mm. 600 micron is nothing but 0.6 mm. So if I put up sand here, that should also be dry sand. That should also be dry sand or river sand. It should be normally river sand. You can also use any other material. It can be this sand also. So in this case, 1 mm passing and 600 micron retained. So whatever soil that is going to be retained here, that sand should be used here. That sand should be placed in the sand pouring cylinder. So once I have done this part, until when I should put up this sand here, such that only 1 centimeter, top 1 centimeter is visible to me. I will not put up into entire height. Ensure that you are going to put up such that it should be 1 centimeter, just by eye level. No need of putting a scale and checking it. Just by eye level, if you feel that is 1 centimeter, that is sufficient. You need not go into detail. Then take the weight of this entire sand pouring cylinder containing sand. Take the weight of this sand pouring cylinder containing sand. Now, that is what you will try to get it with respect to this value. That is sand pouring cylinder containing sand W1. Probably you might get around 6,500 grams. I'm just giving a rough value. It need not be the same. It is going to vary with respect to what is the type of container that is going to be used. Generally, I'm getting some value. Then the second thing is, what is that you need to do? Here you need to do something with respect to this thing. Now you have this calibrating can here. This is your calibrating can, this particle. This is your calibrating can. Now what do? You place this calibrating can bottom, then you place this sand pouring cylinder containing sand above this calibrating can. Above this calibrating can. Then, as I told, above this calibrating can. And in this sand pouring cylinder, there is a shutter here. You can open and close this shutter. So what will happen? If I open this shutter, what will happen? My sand which was placed in this sand pouring cylinder will start to flow. When it starts to flow, what will happen? The height here, initially it was at 1 centimeter, it will start to reduce. So you can passing here. Okay, once you know the sand here passing, when it stops, what will happen? When it's flowing, when it stops, it will stop here. Then close the shutter here, close the shutter, then take again the weight of this mold here. Again, sand pouring cylinder containing sand. Now if I do the subtraction between these two, this and this, I can take the subtraction between these two molds. What will happen? Initially, it was in terms of 6,000 something. Now it has reduced to probably 4,000 something. In the sense, 1,000 grams has been passing through this sand pouring cylinder. But just because this sand pouring cylinder is having a conical section at the top, conical section at the bottom, you will have a cone of sand here. So there is an excess here. So how do I do it? How to find out this excess? Again, you can directly place a scale there, put a this excess. Again, what can you do? You place the sand pouring cylinder Somebody is making some noise here. Somebody has not unmuted themselves.
Rishabh Singh, please mute the video. I request Rishabh Singh.
Okay. Then once you do this thing, you get the sand here extra. Then you can directly put. Then again, you have the sand pouring cylinder containing sand. You put it this sand pouring cylinder on a normal sheet. It need not always be a glass plate. It need not always be a glass plate. Put it in a normal sheet here. You put it in a normal piece of paper. Allow this sand to flow. What will happen? My sand will be forming a cone shape here. Now take the weight of this sand alone in the conical section. So what that I require? I have found out the weight of sand pouring cylinder. I know the weight of sand in the cylinder. In the sense, I know only this part, this entire thing, this region. I will be knowing this entire region. What is the weight of the sand in this region, containing this region? And also, I can also know. I also know the volume of the calibrating can, because it's a normal cylinder. The volume of the calibrating can, in the sense, the height of the calibrating can will be 15 centimeters and the diameter will be 10 centimeter. So you know the volume of this calibrating container. So there you can find the calibrating. Then once you've done this part, then take the density of the sand. I'm going to tell later why you are going to take the density of sand, because you are trying to do at the site. Why is that I require this thing? So I find out what's the density of sand. Density is nothing but mass by volume. I know the what's the mass that is going to be filled up in this calibrating container. I also know the volume of this calibrating container. So in this case, I can find out the density of this sand. So once this has been done, now you go to the site. Now you go to the site. So at this site, you clear of the soil surface. Ensure that if there is any plantations there, or if there is any grass, or if there is animal waste there, clear of that section. Level this ground surface such that this tray, the tray with a hole, can be placed horizontally. It should not be inclined there. Can be placed horizontally. Then the tray with containing hole, the diameter of this hole is probably around 10 centimeter. Then what is that you do? You start digging the soil only in this region. You start digging soil only in this region. So remove the soil here, put up only in this tray only. Do not throw away the soil. Remove whatever is there, put up only in this tray only. So, and also, what should be the depth of the soil now in terms of removal? It should be in the range of minimum should be 13 centimeter and maximum should be 15 centimeter. 13 to 15 centimeter should be the depth of this hole. So in this case, if I try to dig it, take a scale or take any pen, you know the pen height of this pen, you insert that pen there, whether that is sufficient. Look into that thing, then take this thing. Once you start digging, now you're probably around 14 or 15, 14.5 centimeter. You can stop there. You need not go up to 15 centimeter. Now, after taking, now take up this soil and put it in a chamber or put it in a container. It's a container, plastic container here. Put this entire thing in a plastic container. Then come to the laboratory. Take the weight of the soil mass from this chair. Whatever I have dug out, I'm going to take out that soil mass. Now, as you can all remember, density is nothing but mass by volume. I know the mass of soil that has been excavated. I know this value. I know this value. I know the mass of the soil excavated. But I do not know this volume. Why don't I know this volume? Because in this case, what is going to happen? Because if this is a ground level, if I try to dig a hole, what will happen? This will be not a correct circular shape. It will be in terms of an irregular shape. If it was a correct square shape, I could have known the volume directly. If it was a correct cylindrical shape, I could have known the volume directly. But because we are digging, even I am the same person digging, I'm going to get different volume. So what is that happening? Now it's of irregular shape. So in this irregular shape, I need to find out the volume. If it was a regular shape, I can use the formula pi d square by h or something. I can use the formula. Because it's an irregular shape, I need to find out this thing. Now in this regard, what is that I do? I take up again using the sand pouring cylinder initially, which I had probably 6,800 grams. So I'm going to take this entire sand pouring cylinder containing sand to this lab site and place this sand pouring cylinder exactly on this hole which I have dug. Exactly on this hole which I have dug. Then I'm going to open the shutter. I'm going to open the shutter. What will happen? My sand will start to flow. My sand will start to flow such that it is going to fill up this entire volume here. It is going to flow here and it is going to fill up this entire hole which I have dug here. So again, it will be in excess of this conical shape. Now, once it has stopped, it will not start to flow here. Then close the shutter. Then take the weight of this sand pouring cylinder after the sand has been poured at the side. After the sand has been poured at the side, take that weight. So you can get that weight at the site has to be this value, W6 value. And you know the soil was excavated. You can now on the tray which you have taken, that is the soil mass. Then initially, as I told, density is nothing but mass by volume. But in this case, I don't know the volume. Because in this case, what is that I do? I try to find out what is the volume. So volume is equal to mass by density. Volume is equal to mass by density. So what is that mass there? The mass is nothing but the sand mass. Mass is nothing but the sand. What is the amount of sand that has been passing through that hole. So once I know this thing, then I can find out the density. And that is why this test is called as sand replacement test. Sand replacement method. That is the only thing. So in this case, we are not replacing the soil with respect to sand, but just to find out the volume of that uneven shape of this cylinder which I have dug. That is why I'm going to use a sand here. Either I can use a sand here, river sand, either I can use yum sand. But the main thing that should be remembered is I should be using a uniform sand. I should be using something called as uniform sand, such that the sand range soil particles, it should be in only this range. That is the only thing that should be required. So I'm hoping that you have understood this thing. I'm going to continue then. Then once you're done this thing, again, both with respect to dry core cutter test as well as sand replacement test, I need to find out something called as water content. If I want to find out dry density or dry unit weight, I need to find out something called as water content. So how do I do it? Water content generally we do with respect to oven drying method. There are many methods. The basic, almost universal method is oven drying method. So in this oven drying method, what is that? You need to find out, you need to have a water content cup. You'll be having a water content cup or moisture content cup. And if you are going to the site and if you don't have the balance there, the weighing balance there, then you take some amount of soil mass there, close the lid and come back to the laboratory, take the weight. If you're taking directly at this laboratory itself, and when you're placing this moisture content, you need to open the moisture content cap. The cap should be opened while placing in the oven. Remember that thing. The cap should be opened, then place it in the oven. Generally, the oven temperature will be in the range of 105 to plus or 105 plus or minus 5 degree. So it should be in the range of 110 to 100 degrees. That should be the range of this oven, temperature of this oven. Suppose if I have a more organic soil, if I have an organic soil, or if it is having peat content, or if it is having a peat soil, what will happen? How do I know it is an organic soil? If I take the smell of that soil, it will be having some dead materials, it will be having some plant waste. All these things, I'm going to get the odor, I'm going to get that smell. So in that case, then I'm going to reduce the temperature to by about only 80 degrees. I need to keep the temperature to 80 degrees. I will not keep the temperature to 105 degrees. And what should be the length? Again, if I tell how much duration should I keep in the oven? Generally, it should be kept for 24 hours. Water content cup should be kept for 24 hours. Why it should be kept only for 24 hours? So it is not the case. If it is having a sandy type of soil, in the sense my sand content is more, then I'm going to place this in the only with respect to about 15 hours. 15 hours is sufficient for me. But if it is a clay type of soil, if it is a clay type of soil, it is like a black cotton soil or a fine grained soil, then I need to keep it for 24 hours. Then after 24 hours, you can remove that thing, wait for at least 5 minutes such that the water moisture content cup cools, then take the weight. Then you can take the weight and do with calculation with respect to determination of moisture content. So this is with respect to determination of moisture content. The main thing that we want to discuss is grain size distribution. So I need to understand what is the size of my soil particles, whether it is mainly consisting of gravel, whether it is mainly consisting of sand, whether it is mainly consisting of silt or clay. At this site, I can only visualize that it is containing more amount of sand. But what's the amount? What's the percentage of this sand? How do I find out? So in that case, I need to find something called as grain size analysis. Again, grain size analysis will be done with respect to two methods. One is dry method, the other one is wet method. If I want to do with respect to wet method, in the sense, what is that I do? Suppose I have a site, I have a soil mass, I get to the laboratory, I want to find out what is the component of this soil. How much is the amount of sand, how much is the amount of gravel, how much is the amount of clay. So in that regard, what do? The first thing what I do, I am going to take 1 kg of my soil mass. This 1 kg should be such that it should be dry soil mass. First, water you are going to get at the site, you keep that entire thing in a bowl in the oven for 1 day. Ensure that there is all the moisture has been removed. Then you take 1 kg of the dry soil mass. Then after taking 1 kg of dry soil mass, take 75 micron sieve. Take this 75 micron sieve. This is your sieve here. Then you put up 1 kg of soil mass here. Then you put up a tap. This is water. And water is flowing. Ensure that all the soil particles which is passed are finer than 75 micron passes here. So you collect this entire chamber into a tub or into a bucket, not a problem. Now what will happen? Now here the water will be soil color. If the soil is reddish, my water will be reddish in water, soil water here. So here what will happen? I'm going to get soil parts only with respect to sand and gravel. I'm going to get with respect to sand and gravel. That is the only remaining part here. The rest of the part, which was silt and clay, has been passing downwards here. So in this regard, I need to understand this thing. First thing what I do, I take 1 kg of my dry soil mass, then keep my dry soil mass, then go to a tap, open the water, then allow the water to soak the soil mass, then wash the soil mass. This is called as wet sieving analysis or wets analysis. Once I wash the soil mass, what will happen? The finer particles, which was giving coloring to my soil particles, reddish color, those particles will flow with respect to water. It will pass through. The only particles which were sand, just like your river sand, it is colorless. It is you can feel the sand content, color. That content will be there. Now, once you have done this part will be wet. So what do? You keep this again in terms of oven bowl. You pass the entire this sand and gravel to a oven and place this in a oven. And again, this is a soil moisture here. Remove excess of water. Again, place this also in the oven. This thing also in the oven. Both the things should be placed in the oven. Then, what is that? You have a set of sieves. The set of sieves will always be arranged in a decreasing order. So in the sense, if it is here, in this sense, here it will be 4.75. The next will be 2 mm. The next will be 1 mm. The next will be 600 micron. Next will be 425 micron, 300 micron, 150 micron. Then you have a pan. There is no hard and fast rule that these should be the set of sieves. Sometimes probably in your laboratory, you might not be having 425 micron sieve. You can skip, not a problem. But generally, this should be a trend of this soil sample. Then, this soil is what I told, dry sieve. When I told you to keep from the oven, after passing through the 75 micron, retained on the soil mass, retained on the 75 micron sieve, that soil which was oven dried again, that soil will be poured into this set of sieves. It will be poured into this set of sieves. This will be about whatever it can be. Water amount, probably if I try to understand, if I had taken 1 kg of the dry soil mass, retained on 75 micron. So retained on 75 micron is, let us say 400 or let us say 600 grams. And passing 75 micron is 400 grams. So take this entire 600 grams, pass here. Entire 600 grams, pass it here. Then you have a mechanical sieve shaker. Place them. Generally, it will be for 10 minutes. You place that on the sieve shaker on 10 minutes. Then remove the entire thing after placing from the sieve shaker after 10 minutes. Then take the weight of each sieve. Now what will happen? The soil particles which are remaining will be allowed, it will be stagnant there. In the sense, it will be here, retained here. So in this case, take the weight of the soil. Now, I also know the empty weight of this sieve. Then directly, I can directly find out here. So in this case, what is the diameter? Again, 4.75 mm sieve, 2 mm sieve. It is 840. In our skin, in India, I don't think we can get 840. You get 425. You get 150. You get 75. Similarly, you get this kind of things. Then you know the weight of each sieve. That is empty weight of each sieve. And after taking from the sieve shaker, you also know the mass of sieve plus the soil retained. Then if I subtract these two values, if I subtract these two columns, I'm going to get the amount of soil retained in each sieve. I'm going to get the soil retained in each sieve. Then I'm going to get this value. So water taken, if I taken 524 grams, probably I might get 523.7 grams here. So you need not worry about that thing. 1 or 2 grams, you need not worry at all. You can directly substitute for any value. Don't do any correction because that is not going to make it that of a difference. Then once you've done this thing, convert this value into a percentage. So initially, if I take 524 grams for 49.9 divided by 524 into 100, we're going to get into a percentage. So everything, again, column this percentage. Then because I want to plot a graph with respect to particle size or grain diameter or particle diameter or sieve size with respect to percentage passing. So in this regard, I'm going to subtract this water value here. I'm going to get 100 minus this value. I'm going to get this kind of values. 100 minus this one, this value. So in all this case, I'm going to get this value. So once you have done this thing, then I can start to plot. The plotting will be with respect to semi-logarithm scale. I'm going to use something called as semi-logarithm chart here. So again, here will be a logarithm scale. Here it will be a normal scale. That is a graph sheet. You start plotting. From this plot or from this table itself, I can find out what is the amount of gravel, what is the amount of sand, and what is the amount of fines. In this case, fines is nothing but silt and clay. So in this case, I found out this value. But in this fines, once I have done this part, in this fines, I don't know what is the amount of silt and clay separately. I know only together, as a together, they are 44%. But how do I find out what is the amount of silt, what is the amount of clay? So again, for this case, I need to find something called as hydrometer analysis. Again, when do I go for this hydrometer analysis? Suppose if I have this value fines, if it is less than 10%, I will not do hydrometer analysis. The code says you need not to perform hydrometer analysis if my fines is less than 10%. Fines in the sense 75 micron passing is less than 10%. You need not do it. So only if it is greater than 10%, and if the client requires, then only that is required to do the hydrometer analysis. And probably the hydrometer analysis, everybody only with respect to soil hydrometer. Same, what is a hydrometer? Hydrometer is a device such that it measures the density of a liquid. Suppose in your village's side, you could have seen something called as a lactometer. Because if you have something as a cow, you want to sell your milk to a government. Based on your thickness of your milk, they are going to provide some rate for you. How do I determine that thing? There's something called as hydrometer. Again, it will be milk hydrometer. Something it is called as lactometer with respect to milk. So if I place this hydrometer there, it is going to tell the density of that liquid, density of that milk there. Similarly, in terms of beer crafting also, just like your beer, if I want to place, again, you have separate. These hydrometers separate, this hydrometer separate, this hydrometer separate. Our soil hydrometer is also separate. Why? The readings will be different. But the concept remains the same. So in all these cases, we are going to find out. So if I start analyzing, the first thing, what is that I require? I require something called as calibration of hydrometer. First thing, before start of the test with respect to hydrometer, I need to do this thing. How do I calibrate? You take a piece of sheet, or a white sheet, you place this hydrometer on the white sheet and trace out the boundary. You trace out the boundary like this. So once you have traced out this boundary, then mark these readings. Again, you have reading here 30 here, you have reading here 25 here, you have reading here 20 here, you have reading 15 here, 10 here, 5 here, 0 here, and -5 here. The readings will be in terms of not as a whole number, it will be 1.030. So you need not bother 1.015. Don't take in terms of this value. Directly take in terms of 30, 25, 20, all these things. Once you have marked this value, then trace out this value. Once you have done this, there's something called as we need to calibrate. So for this thing to calibrate, as I told, 30, 25, 1.025, no need not worry about those things. Directly take these values, 30, 25. And the least count of this hydrometer, is always 0.5. In the sense, between 20 and 20, the next reading will be 25.5, then 26, 26.5, 27, 27.5, 28. That is how that is least count is something called as that value. So what I am reading, I should be getting in terms of 0.5 only. I cannot get 27.7. I cannot get 27.9. I can only get 27.5 or 27. That is what I am trying to tell you. So once you got these values, Once you have done this thing, you need to plot a graph. So to plot this graph, what is that you require? You have a simple formula, effective height, and this is the h value, that is height with respect to this thing, and this smallish is nothing but the height of the bulb. What is the height of the bulb? This thing is called as the height of the bulb. This is your height of the bulb. This is your small h. And what is the capital H? Capital H is this line, the where the bulb, this part is called as bulb. This part is called as stem. Bulb and stem. Then H is always constant. Then this capital H is changes. This is my H1. Then with respect to 25, it is H2. With respect to 10, it is H4. Similarly, these values. This is my capital value, H value. So in this regard, I can find out what are these values. That is a capital H value. Small h is a constant. And what is this VH? VH is nothing but the volume of the hydrometer. Volume of the hydrometer in the sense, because my hydrometer is calibrated such that my volume, if I put it in a pure water, distilled water, if I place my hydrometer, my reading will be in terms of 1.00. In that range only it will be there, because for pure water, this is the range. That is how it has been manufactured. So therefore, I did not do this volume. How to find out this volume? Either I can put up some 800 ml of water, place this hydrometer, the height of this water will increase, take the volume. Otherwise, I can directly place this hydrometer on a weighing balance. I can place this on a weighing balance, then take the volume directly as it is, because it has been calibrated, or it has been manufactured such that the volume and the mass is equal. The volume and the mass is equal. The density is equal to 1 here with respect to hydrometer. That is what I'm trying to tell you here. Once you have done this thing, what is the A? A is nothing but the cross-section area of the jar. Cross-section area of the jar is nothing but this jar, this steel jar. This is a 1000 ml jar. This is the cross-section area. I need to find out this cross-section area. So how do I find out? If you have a vernier caliper, you can place it there, take the diameter, take the cross-section area. Otherwise, what can you do? You also know that volume is equal to area into height. I already know it's a calibrated container. So in this scale, if I say this is 700, this is 800. So in this range, it is containing 100 ml of water. And if I take the scale and measure this height, if I take the scale and measure this height, I know the volume, it is 100 divided by height. Probably it will be around 2.4 or 2.6 centimeter. It depends. I'm just giving a random number here. Directly you can get the cross-section area. You can get the cross-section area. That is how you need to find out. So once you do this part, the calibration is complete. In the sense, for a particular hydrometer and particular jar, this test is done only once. And you can do, for if you have done once, after 10 years also you can do the same value. You did not do what's on new chart here. You did not do any new charts here. Then after doing this thing, the thing is you need to, with respect to dispersing agent. What's the dispersing agent you need to do? There's something called as 4% of dispersing agent. And how do I do it? You take 33 grams of sodium hexametaphosphate, 33 grams, it's a powder, and 7 grams of sodium carbonate, it is also a powder. You take these two and put it in a 1000 ml jar. Make a solution of it. You put up the 33 grams of this value, 33 grams of sodium carbonate in a 1000 ml jar in water, stir it up, and that is a solution. That solution is called as dispersing agent solution. Dispersing agent solution. And you need not do always with respect to 1000 ml. The only thing that you need to do with respect to 4%. So it is 33 plus 4 is nothing but 40 grams is nothing but 4% only. Therefore, in that regard, what is that we found out is, that is how we need to do. Then whatever the amount, as I told earlier, the soil that was passing through 75 micron was 400 grams. So I'm going to get 400 grams of my soil mass. But for this conduction of this hydrometer test, I require only 50 grams of the soil mass. Whatever the amount, it can be 400 grams, it can be 700 grams. I don't require that much amount to conduct this test. I only require 50 grams of the soil mass. So I will take 50 grams of the soil mass. Then in a China bowl there, then I'm going to add 100 ml of this dispersing agent, which I have prepared already. 100 ml of this dispersing agent, which I have prepared already. Then put it in a blender or a stirrer here. Then mix it up. You stir for probably around 10 minutes. Once you do this stirring, then put it in a jar. Then you put it in a jar that is 1000 ml jar. What will happen? It will only fill up to this mark. It will only fill up to this mark. So you put excess of water such that this jar is reached to 1000 ml. This marking should be leveled up. This marking should be leveled up. So you put up excess of water, then level up. Then you need to do the shaking of this shape. Ensure that no amount of soil particles is stuck here. Nothing should be stuck here. You do like this. You can do you can just shake it off. Ensure that all the soil particles are separated out. Then you start to take the readings. You place you will be having three chambers here. One is soil containing dispersing agent and water. The other one is will be 100 ml dispersing agent, remaining will be water. The third one will be there actually. It is nothing but only water. That only jar with water will be with respect to clean the surface, nothing else. You just want to clean the hydrometer. So what is that you do? Once you start shaking, you keep it as it is. Directly place this hydrometer here. You place this hydrometer, you start the timer, you start the stopwatch. Now, for every 15 seconds, in the sense 15 seconds, what is the reading you need to find out? So you look into the eye level, what is the reading? 30 seconds, what is the reading? 1 minute, what is the reading? 2 minutes, what is the reading? 4 minutes, what is the reading? In these time intervals only, you need to take these readings. So look into the value, take that reading, get that values. Once you got this value, then you remove the hydrometer from this soil chamber or from this soil suspension, place it in a water, clean the surface. Why? Because if I place here, my soil particles will be stagnant here. So I need to clean it of water, then place it in my dispersing agent solution here. It is 100 ml of dispersing agent, remaining will be water. Take the reading. Then the next reading will be with respect to 8 minutes. Next reading will be with respect to 8 minutes. Similarly, with respect to what will happen, with respect to time, my silt particles, because as I already told, 75 micron passing, it will be containing only silt and clay. Only my silt particles will start to settle. My clay particles will be there. So in this case, what will happen? It is a sedimentation test here. Therefore, my hydrometer will start to reduce down. It will start to come down. Initially, probably around 15 seconds, it will be here. Probably around 2 minutes, it will come here. Around half an hour, it will come here. 1 hour, it will be there. So in this regard, my reading will going to change here. So reading is going to change here. So this is, if I start here, because the solution is entirely mixed up here, this will be color. But this test should be conducted for 24 hours. This test should be conducted for 24 hours. Again, if I place this hydrometer here, by the time, if I come to the next day, all my soil particles, if it is more amount of silt, it will be in this color. If it is not, silt content is less, then it will be in this color. It will be in this color. So that is how we need to do this thing. Then you have some corrections that need to be applied because because it's with respect to water, temperature, my atmosphere temperature, room temperature is going to vary. So again, water temperature is also varying. So it is also going to affect. Then also there is something called something with respect to dispersing agent. So because you added a dispersing agent, that is, I want to separate out the soil particles. It is just like a soap. I want to remove the dirt. So if I, similarly in terms of soil particles, I'm going to remove this silt and clay, separate it out the silt and clay. So what is the effect of this dispersing agent? Because I already have added 100 ml of this dispersing agent, this soil solution. Therefore, I need to understand this thing. Then you have this meniscus correction. Just because if you're trying to find out reading here, because it is opaque here, the reading will be sufficient to me. No? Top meniscus only, but the actual reading is at the bottom meniscus here. So in this regard, we need to do something called meniscus correction. That will also be done. So finally, as I told, the intervals will be after 30 seconds or 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 8 minutes, double the time. Next, you increase the time. 8 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, 16 hours, probably it will come in the midnight. If you started morning at 10 o'clock, by 5 o'clock, probably you can take the 8-hour reading, but 16-hour reading come in the midnight. So you neglect that 16-hour reading, come back the next day, take the. So once you get this value, you can prepare this chart. You know the hydrometer reading. You can get this hydrometer reading here. That is hydrometer reading, which you're going to place there. From this thing, you can find out what is the percentage here. So again, initially, what I used to get, I used to stop here only. If I do only dry sieve analysis, I used to get my curve will be only stopping here. I will not be getting this part. So because of this thing, I'm able to get this part. Now I can find out what's the amount of clay here, what's the amount of silt here. So that is the importance of this test. So that is why if it is more than 10%, I need to perform this test. Similarly, you have something called as liquid limit and plastic limit. So in this regard, with respect to slope stability analysis, this is not a necessary test. So I'm going to skip this thing. If I have time left at the end, I'm going to continue this thing. And similarly, we have something called Sperner test. This is also not a necessary test. It can be used, it can be done with respect to slope stability analysis. But because of time constraint and if time permits, I can start again. The main thing that I wanted to discuss was with respect to your shear test. Because as I told in the soil report, that is what I require in terms of analysis. So there are 3 types of test here in terms of testing. So that is with respect to direct shear test. First thing, probably you might look into this equipment. You have this equipment. This is your proving ring. This is your proving ring. This is your dial gauge. This is your lever arm here. You can have a self loading plate here. This setup is called as a direct shear test setup. And you have a mold here. The mold of this direct shear test setup is that it is having a dimension of 6 centimeter by 6 centimeter. In the sense, this width will be 6 centimeter. This width will be 6 centimeter. And this total height will be probably around 5 centimeter. But for a soil sample preparation, the height of the soil sample is only 2.5 centimeter. Is what is required. And this is called something called as a porous stone. It is a porous stone. It is such that my water can flow through it. And you have a grit plate with holes. This is a grit plate. And normally you have a base plate at the bottom. And again, this is called as a loading pad. So why is it called a direct shear test? What is that I'm trying to do here? As you can know, we are trying to shear off the soil mass. I'm going to ensure that my soil particles are, the contact between my soil particles are lost. So directly what is done, I'm trying to apply a force such that these 2 soil particles are cutting off each other. So in that regard, I need to apply something called as normal force. So in that regard, what if I start to do the experiment? The first thing is I place this base plate. The thickness of probably 5 mm will be there. I'm going to place that in the bottom. Then above this base plate, I'm going to place this porous stone. Then above this the porous stone, I'm going to use this perforated porous stone or perforated grit plate or a solid grit plate. Perforated grit plate means this is your perforated grit plate. This is your solid plate. That's the only difference. So again, place this thing. Then place your soil specimen. Again, if water at the bottom, again, same thing should be at the top. And while placing this grid plate, ensure that you place perpendicular to the direction of loading. So in this case, my loading is in this direction. So therefore, as I place that my grid plate in this direction. It is just like our shoes, because our shoes have a sole here. Because we are going to walk in this direction. So what will be lying in the shoes? It will be always horizontal here. Why? Because I need to have more friction. Similarly, in terms of this soil mass also, you need to place this grid plate this direction only. And this grid plate, again, you can do with respect to, one is undisturbed soil sample or disturbed soil sample. You can take amount of soil sample, compact it, then place it there. Or you can have a core cutter test. You can have that specimen or extractor, remove that, again place it there. Once you have done this part, then you start applying the load. There are 2 things one with respect to testing. One is with respect to dial gauge reading or displacement dial gauge reading. The other one is with respect to proving ring reading. Dial gauge reading and proving ring reading. So what is this dial gauge reading? This dial gauge reading is nothing but this side. You have a dial gauge here. It will be placed here. This is your dial gauge. And what is this reading? So how do I start this test? Every 20 value of this dial gauge reading, what is the shearing force? Proving ring reading. Every 20 of this division, what is the proving ring reading? So that is what I try to do here. So in this regard, I have a table. My dial gauge reading is 20. My proving reading is 2. My dial gauge is 40. My proving reading is 2.2. My dial gauge is 60. Again, it goes on increasing. So again, you get maximum value. That is the value we're going to do. Then, once you've done this thing, there is something called as, you need to do something called as corrected area. Why is this corrected area required? Because initially, before my shearing, my cross-section area would be this much. Now, because I'm applying a shearing force, what will happen? My cross-section area is going to reduce here. My cross-section area is going to reduce. And that is why I need to apply this corrected area formula here. Once I do this thing, then again, with respect to shearing force, what is the force applied? Again, with respect to this shearing force, you have this proving ring reading. You get this reading. You know, you need to find out something called as proving ring constant, PRC, proving ring constant. and it will be constant for every proving ring. Not all the proving rings will be same. It will be different. So if I know this thing, if I apply 1 kg load, what will be the deflection here? So in that regard, it will be calibrated earlier only, and this will be my one reading. This will not be my one reading. That will be my 5/5 reading. So proving in constant is for one division, what is the value? So in this regard, if I take 2.2 in the sense, or 2. Something here, 2.2 if I take here, it is nothing but that value. It is nothing but 10 into 1. So it is 11. 11 into this proving ring constant. So that is how I need to take care of this constant value, proving ring constant. Then I need to perform this test for minimum of 3 samples. Sample 1 with respect to 0.5 kg per centimeter square, sample 2 with respect to 1 kg per centimeter square, sample 3 with respect to 1.5 kg per centimeter square. Or it can be 50 kp, 100 kp, or 150. Both are same, nothing else. There is no change, only units will be changing. That is a compulsory thing that you need to be done. You need to do only with respect to 3 samples here. And also you need to look into the fact that what is the rate of loading? What is the rate of this loading? Again, what will happen, because it's a machine, it's try to start applying, this will start to move here. That will be applied, taken care of this gears. If I put up here into first gear, it will be some mm, 1.25 mm per minute. If I put it in the second gear, it will be 1.5 mm per minute. If I put it in third gear, it will be 2 mm per minute. So it is going to change. Generally, all our cases, it will be 1.25 mm per minute. All our direct shear test or UCC test as well as triaxial shear test, it will be 1.25 mm per minute. And also you need to find out with respect to lever arm ratio. So what is this lever arm ratio? So this is nothing but this length from here till here. It will be around probably 50 centimeter, and distance between these two L 5 centimeter. So in this case, L2 is 50, L1 is 5, so it is 10. So what does this lever arm ratio indicate? Suppose if I put up here 1 kg of my soil mass or 1 kg plate, if I put up 1 kg plate here, on my soil sample, a normal load of 10 kg would be acting. On my soil mass, a load of 10 kg of this load will be acting. And that is the importance of this lever arm ratio on this putting up this plate. So by changing this plate only, I can change out the normal pressure. I can change the normal pressure. That is 0.5, 1 or 1.5. Again, as this is with respect to dial gauge reading, for every 20 reading, what is the proving reading? 20, 40, this thing. Again, 120, 140, 220, 240. I'll go, it goes on increasing. Again, nowadays you have something called as a digital reading. Again, both the things will be digital. You just have to take down the readings appropriately. Or sometimes it will be connected to a computer. Directly the computer gives everything nowadays. The next thing is with respect to unconfined compression testing here. In this case, and the main thing that you need to remember is, if I have a mold of this mold size 6 centimeter by 6 centimeter, the soil sample that should be taken should be passing through 4.75 mm. The soil samples that should be taken to conduct this direct shear test should be passing through 4.75 mm. Similarly, the 4.75 mm sieve is also used with respect to my UCC test as well as my triaxial test. So in this UCC test, what is that I know? The first thing that you have this, you have a cylindrical mold here, and the height of cylindrical mold will be in this shape, and the length to diameter ratio. The length is, this is my length, and this is the diameter. This length to diameter ratio will be in the range of 2 or 2.1 or 2.2. So in this case, what is that we are trying to find out? This length will be, if I normally in our laboratory, it will be 76 mm or 7.6 centimeter, and this diameter will be 3.38 mm, double. If this value is 38, it will be double. Or it can be probably 80 mm also. It doesn't make a difference. But it cannot be 90. That is why the important thing is L by D ratio of 2 only, in that range only. If it is less, what will happen? It will barrel. Just like your columns, it will go to barrel. Like this, it will happen. If it is long, what will happen? It will buckle now. It will buckle like a column. So in this, that is why this L by D ratio is important. So while preparing, you can do with respect to undisturbed soil sample. You can take the side, push this as a core cutter, just like a core cutter, push this thing, remove the soil sample, then trim off the soil sample such that the L by D ratio is L2. Otherwise, you fill up the soil sample, ensure that there is the same density, then cut off this excess. Then once you have done this part, then you have a proving ring reading here. You have a proving ring. You have a dial gauge. Again, same, just in your dial gauge, every 20 divisions, what is the proving reading? Every 20, what is the reading? 40, what is the reading? 60. Anything, all these things can be done by a single person. There is no need for 2 persons. because I know what is the interval that I'm going to take with respect to my dial gauge reading. So only thing that you need to look into is this proving ring reading. And suppose if I miss one reading, it doesn't make a big difference. Don't worry. Suppose you're going to take somebody talks to you and you're going to miss a reading. You need not worry. That reading will be interpolated because you're going to get continuous values. So what will happen? My soil sample is going to fail. And how, if it is not failing, how do I know it is going to fail? My reading should come back. My reading should come back. If it is not coming back, it is stagnant or it is going slightly increasing. Then when do I stop? It should be stopped at 20% of this total height. Suppose if I have a soil sample of 100 mm or 10 centimeter, so but the sample gets reduced to 80 mm, I need to stop the test. I will not be doing for entire day. I need to stop. If it is failing, I can stop immediately. Then once you have done this, you are going to something called as shear failure line. This is your failure line. So in this regard, the soil sample is going to fail in terms of shear. My soil sample is going to always fail in terms of shear, and I need to measure this angle. And I need to measure this angle. How do I measure this angle? I take a scale, mark these 2 points, extend this line, take a line, angle here, take up this angle. So this angle is nothing but alpha value. This value is nothing but alpha value. Again, you have a table, dial gauge reading, and again proving reading. And what is the maximum stress? That final value will be the sample here. Generally, one sample is sufficient, but generally what we do, we take with respect to average of 3 samples here, specimens, average of 3 specimens. But with respect to direct shear, 3 samples is mandatory. You need to do 3 samples. Here, 1 sample is sufficient, but just for our confidence boosting, I need to perform for average of 3 samples, average of 2, it depends. So that is how we need to do with respect to unconfined compression testing. The third thing is last test is with respect to triaxial testing. Now, what's the main difference here? The triaxial testing is the sample preparation with respect to unconfined compression testing as well as triaxial testing is same. There is no change at all. It is same, common throughout. And here the only change is, as the name itself indicates, it is triaxial. It is triaxial in the sense in all the 3 directions, X, Y, and Z. In all the triaxial, there is some pressure. And why is it so much of relevance here? Because if I have a soil sample, if I have a soil sample, and if I remove soil sample from here, what will happen? My soil is having a pressure from this top over the soil mass. It is having a pressure from the side of the soil mass. It would have a pressure in the other direction also. So in practice or in reality, my soil is confined already. It is confined with some other soil particles. So in this regard, this is the most precise method of finding out the shear parameters. Depending on all the other testing, this method is the best method. The only change is here what we do, here you have a soil sample, you place the soil sample, but you are going to confine the soil sample with respect to water pressure. You are going to confine the soil sample with respect to water pressure. But if I directly put up a water pressure, what will happen? My soil sample, whatever hardness, whatever density it may be, it is going to collapse. So in that regard, what I do, if I want to remove this thing, I need to put up a rubber membrane here. I will going to put up a rubber membrane here. So that rubber membrane will be put up here. So this is the color. Yellow color is nothing but my rubber membrane here. So again, at the bottom and the top, I'm going to put a plastic piece here, such that it is going to be watertight. Then put up a O-ring there, something called as O-ring. So I'm going to ensure that this membrane is holding my soil sample. And whatever the pressure is there coming from the soil sample, coming from water, it is not going to let my water to seep into my soil mass. So once I have done this part, again, conduct this test, I need to be doing for 3 specimens mandatorily. Minimum I need to be doing for 3 specimens. And what is the pressure range? The pressure range will be in terms of again 0.5, 1 and 1.5 kg per centimeter square or 50, 100 and 150 kPa. In this case also, you have 2 things. One is dial gauge reading. The other one is proving ring reading. Dial gauge reading as well as proving reading. Again, in this case, once you do this thing, you fill up this, you fix everything, ensure that the piston is touching your soil sample. Then you start applying your self pressure. This self pressure is nothing but my confined pressure. How do I do? You have a confining chamber there. You put up, or you have a vacuum pump there. You put up the vacuum through the water. My water will start to flow here. It will start to increase in height here. And because you have a top lid here, you are going to close this lid. It is airtight. What will happen? My water is confined here. So I can ensure the pressure of this water using that apparatus. So by doing this thing, I'm going to put up a pressure of 0.5 kg per centimeter square. Once I have done this part, then I'm going to start applying the load. How do I apply the load? I switch on the machine. What will happen? This plate will start to rise up, and every 20 divisions, what is the probing reading? Every 20 divisions, what is the probing reading? Again, that is going to find out here. This is my dial gauge reading, and this is my proving ring reading. Nothing else. Both the things are same, and that is going to find out with respect to this value. Finally, if you are going to do this thing, you are going to get for 3D samples. Some laboratory, what they do, probably in IAC or somewhere else. In our laboratory, generally we will have a sample of 76 by 38 mm. In some laboratory, what will happen? It will be in the range of 10 centimeter of diameter, 20 centimeter height. But in practice, in research purposes, I have seen that it is that the diameter is 0.5 meters and the height is 1 meter. It's somewhere in other IITs and all. So that is the range. So, but ensure that the L by D ratio is same and the procedure remains the same. If I have this, my soil particles will be passing through 4.75. It will be in the passing through 4.75. If this is the range, my soil particles will not be passing through 4.75. It will be probably around 5 centimeters. 0.5 meter, and it will be much more. It will be about 1/10 of that value. So how do I get to know this thing? This range, this 4.75 mmC, as well as this diameter, is related. How is that related? It is almost 8 to 10 times of this value. 8 to 10 times. So it is 38. It is more than 10 times. So therefore, it is that value. So what is the sample you are going to take? What is the width of your sample? It is also dependent on the soil particles which can use. It will not always be 4.75 mm also. Similarly, in terms of direct shear testing, if you have something called a large direct shear testing, again, in that case, the diameter and the width will be very large. Width will be almost 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter. So in that case, the soil particles can also be increased. So once I do this part, then I got the maximum value. Sigma 3 is, in this case, is my confining pressure. That is my 0.5. Again, in this case, it is 1.0. In this case, it is 1.5. So for these values, I'm going to get my maximum value. I'm going to get this maximum value. Once I go get this maximum value, I'm going to draw this Mohr circle. Then I'm going to get this values in terms of C as well as phi. I'm going to get the values in terms of cohesion as well as friction angle. Once I have done this part, then the triaxial testing is completed here. That is what is required. And again, this triaxial testing, there are various methods. Generally, what we do, we always follow with respect to unconfined conversion, unconsolidated undrained method. That is my UU test. This is the general practice which you do. But in terms of sometimes research oriented or sometimes in terms of much more complicated problems, then I also need to go with respect to consolidated undrained testing. There I need to find out my pore water pressure. I need to find out what is the pore water pressure that is going to come up. And the other thing is with respect to consolidated drain, which is rarely used because it takes more amount of time to complete this test. It will take about probably around 1 week. So it is rarely used, and for only research purpose it is going to be used. The main thing, it will be used with respect to unconsolidated undrained test. Sometime also we will be using with respect to CU test also. And because of the time limit, I'm not going to explain such things. But the thing is, only with respect to UU test will be followed much more in our laboratories. So that is with respect to traction. And again, why is it so? UU test and this thing I wanted to explain. And because of, again, based on all these parameters which you have done, density, particle size, C and phi, I can find out the factor of safety. How? Again, I have an analysis. I can have a textbook. I can have a software. I can do that thing directly. I can find out what's the factor of safety. So, but to find out this factor of safety, I need to find out density. I need to find out C and phi. That's the major thing that need to be inputted into my software or into my calculations. So once I know this thing, I can find out my factor of safety. And with respect to slope stability, the minimum factor of safety for a slope should be 1.5. If it is less than 1.5, then I will tell this slope is unsafe. Probably in some time, probably next month or probably next year, it is going to fail. So that is the assurance which we can give. But if it is more than 1.5, I can rest assured that this slope will be safe there. It is not going to slide there. So that is the importance of this slope stability analysis with respect to laboratory testing. And finally, this last slide, I wanted to tell you that as an engineer or a soil practitioner, the three things that is most important is one is with respect to testing, that is also important, and theory. I should also know what is the theory part, and I should have been having experience. If I have only all these three qualities, then only anybody can become a good practitioner. Therefore, testing becomes much more important. Just because the faculty knows everything doesn't mean that we should also be knowing with respect to testing, because some amount, if I do the testing, sometimes I will get different values, you should get a different value. That should not happen. Testing should be done very precisely. And because we are related with respect to in terms of soil mass here, soil is a natural material. Just like if I have a concrete, I know this thing, I know I have done this compaction, so the concrete will be giving M20 grade. I agreed. But even if I do compaction here, if I do compaction and if you do compaction, the density will be varying because it is soil type. Each particles is different. So therefore, this practice of this engineering, soil engineering, is an art rather than a science. So therefore, much more engineering judgment is required based on all these parameters. So I hope that I have covered all these things. Thank you for your attention. If you have any queries, you can me or you can have a contact with me. Thank you. I hope I have not explained.
Participants